WholeOfEngland here, and welcome to another replay analysis today, and we are going to be looking at Stefan in the Tier 9 European destroyer, the Östergötland. So, we are currently playing on the Northern Lights map, and at the moment we're just sort of getting into battle, and I've sort of started the video off a little bit into the battle because for the sort of starter portion, not really too much happens. A lot of the actual action happens a little further into the game. So, as you can see on screen, you've got the actual upgrades and captain skills that he has currently got on this ship, and at first glance, it does look like a pretty standard destroyer build that you'd have on a ship such as this. So, one thing I'm going to sort of say now before the actual playing of this game starts is how Stefan plays is actually pretty much perfect. I mean, there's not really much I can comment on that really needs much improvement on. It's actually really how his captain is designed. So the first issue really here is with his captain build. You can see he's got the he's got extra consumables instead of the survivability expert, which usually I'd go for as a standard as the first skill to go for the tier 3 on the captain skills. As for every single tier your ship is, so let's say you're tier 1, you gain 350 HP. And considering this is a tier 9 ship, this would definitely be the first skill I'd actually pick, as in this case, what it would add for the ship is an additional 3,150 health points. Now, to start off with this game, it's like you can't see it would make too much impact, but you will see that later game where that would really sort of have impacted this game, probably for the better. I'll put it like that, but we will see that later on in the game. So, another thing to note about this as well is you can probably see that he's got a sort of lesser amount of HP in this, as he's currently got 14,100, which, is the stock hull, as well as he's got the stock fire control system. So this means that rather than having 15,800 HP, he's got the obviously 14,100, and his actual firing range goes up to 9.3 kilometers rather than 10.2. The latter isn't really too much of a problem, just for the fact of, if you're getting in close quarters with a destroyer, it doesn't really matter if they're, 9 kilometers away, because usually you're going to be engaging at probably about 6 to 7, and then if they're getting close, so that's not really a problem itself, but it's more the actual hull. So either way, that's pretty much it. So let's start the map. Really, what Stefan really starts to do is just goes around and is mainly spotting to see what he can really do. And the first actual ship he's going against, well, he's going over to the right side of the map here. So I'm actually going to quickly speed this up just so you can get across, because a lot of it is mainly travelling at the beginning. So most of the action does happen later on, and you will see in a second his actual first engagement. So this is really it. So it is a fairly decent matchup. So he is top tier in this case, as it's a tier 9 game, and there are some tier 7s in here. So he's in the sort of best possible position that you'd want to be in this sort of ship. So I'll just slow this down there. So he just starts dropping some torpedoes onto the anchorage, who seems to have already taken quite a bit of HP, as he's getting very close to half. But you can see there are some shots coming either from the Minnesota or the Monarch there, but they're looking like they're going to devastate him. And yep, there they go. They take pretty much all of his HP, and he's only got about 9,000 left. So on the enemy team, in terms of destroyers, there are also 3. So there are 3 on this side as well. So we've currently got the Östergötland, the Udaloy, and the Akatsuki. And for the enemy team, it is a pretty similar layout. Oh, sorry. Here is the enemy Östergötland, and as I say, Stefan's execution is pretty much perfect. Most of his shots are on point. The ship he's going against here, the enemy Östergötland, is significantly worse. That's all I'm going to say. He's not really firing much. I'm guessing he's probably dropping torps here, which, when you're going for a engagement against another destroyer which has got a pretty high DPM, the first thing you want to do is going to just be doing what Stefan's doing here, which is just really firing, and the torpedoes are a sort of a secondary thing here. So you can see, yeah, he's dropped torpedoes, and obviously he spotted them, and with the Östergötland being a rather fast ship, it's pretty easy for him to actually avoid them, and he's sheared off a decent amount of health off the enemy Östergötland, so he's really taken off about 5k. Thankfully, though, the one good thing about this ship is that it does have the heal, so you will be able to farm some later. So this is why I wouldn't have necessarily called it a problem with the captain skill, as obviously having the additional heal also will come in very useful this game. So honestly, I think it's just really the fact of it still being a stock ship is really the sort of what kind of cripples this game. But either way, it is a very, very close game, and he does an incredibly good job. So now he's dropping some torpedoes on the enemy Izumo, who is currently quite far away, but obviously trying to get some speculative shots, and no one's going to be really getting in the way of those torpedoes, so it seems pretty safe to do so. And by dropping those torpedoes, it's either going to scare off the Izumo or potentially hit it. So either way, it's going to do something. But as you see, the Akatsuki is actually dropping some torpedoes onto the Izumo, but by the looks of it, the first two sets have actually missed. But you know what? Regardless, that doesn't really matter, as the friendly Minnesota has just completely wiped him off the face of the map. So, good job to that Minnesota. That was a very nice shot there. So, with that in mind, so there's no one really posing an imminent danger to the team here, getting into the cap, as he was the only one really pushing quite close. So, now what this allows Stefan to do here is to start pushing up. So, he does also have a speed boost here, which he has been using, but that has just come off effect. But regardless, I mean, you get into nearly 40 knots. That is rather impressive, actually. And here we go. Here is the Östergötland, and Stefan now starts taking aim and firing on him. So yeah, you can see he has actually healed a bit, but either way, Stefan starts making very short work of his HP. He's already back down to half of what he was when he first got spotted, and only a couple of shells got returned to Stefan. And he has dropped some torpedoes, but yeah, they do again miss. So I think that is something, for anyone that's playing and not too familiar with the destroyers, is when you're going in an engagement and you are a gunship, that is your sort of your main priority is to really be firing your main batteries opposed to going for your torpedoes. Speaking of which, he does start dropping them onto this Izumo here, and now just waiting for the Östergötland to get spotted. And there we go, he's not actually used his repair party yet, so I'm assuming it's still on cooldown, so this allows Stefan to start firing. To which, he actually seems to have the advantage here, because he's able to get both sets off, and quite a while the enemy was only able to fire off his rear. But there we go, he manages to score his first kill. Now at this point, the enemy Izumo is now aiming on him. I mean, this is probably where I wouldn't have fired, because I could see he was actually aiming in, and nice, very nice hit there. So he does knock out one of the Izumo's guns, but he does seem to repair it because he got flooding, and then that flooding got mitigated. So yeah, there we go. The Izumo does return fire, but thankfully only manages to get a single hit there, which does very minimal damage of 650. So overall, I think Stefan is very safe here, and now he can just continue on harassing this Izumo, because he's only really got to focus on the one side, because everything on his side, where the Yudaloi is coming from, there's basically nothing. So really, in this case, he is pretty safe. So what he's doing now is just really turning around just so he can go for a different angle of attack. So again, that is one nice thing with the European torpedoes. They're very fast. So even though you've got a target which is quite far away, those torpedoes are going to get there quite quickly. And although they do low damage, you can get them off fairly regularly, and that speed, they're quite hard to avoid, so you're usually going to get a good amount of actual hits. So at this point, he does start pursuing the Izumo again now. So the Izumo is running away. I mean, if I was in his position, I'd be doing exactly the same thing, because if I was going against two destroyers in a battleship alone with nothing to spot them, I would definitely be running away to try and get some support from my team. So the last known position of the Mayhan, well, I was about to say actually, was actually quite close to where he is looking, and does obviously smoke up. So by the looks of it, he's probably trying to provide some smoke, some more, I guess, a cover for the battleship there, just to get him unspotted, to get him into safety, which is what he does. But I mean, Stefan does fire a prospective salvo of torpedoes just in case he manages to score a hit. And there we go, so there's the Mayhan. So this is what I was saying about it being a stock ship. So the Mayhan, that is 2 tiers lower. That is a tier 7 ship, and that has got the same actual HP as the Östergötland here. So you can sort of see the scale of which, not having the upgrade there sort of impacts this ship. So I think, with the way that Stefan plays this, it is obviously certainly possible that he's going to be able to pull this off again, if given the situation, and I think he'll probably be able to actually get a very good result, well, an even better result next time when he does have his ship properly spec'd out. So but what I'm trying to get at is, it's especially when you're dueling other ships, you're really going to want to make sure that you've got as much health as possible. But regardless, at this point, the Mayhan now does get unspotted, and the Izumo is now about to go behind this island, so that gives Stefan a very good opportunity to really close the gap there. So normally in this situation it'd be quite hard to get close to an enemy like this, because you'd get spotted and then you'd be under their secondary fire and their main battery fire, but because he's going behind an island, that means he's not going to be spotted from most of the portion that he gets close. So thankfully he's got his actual speed boost active, so he's going to be getting just sub 20 knots, well, sorry, 40 knots, and his torpedoes are reloading, and he's also got a spare repair party, not repair party, a damage control party, which he, is actually very good in that situation. He didn't use it because, his fire was nearly out anyway, and he's got sort of a repair party left to heal, so now if he gets set fire after he engages this Izumo, then he'll be able to repair it afterwards. And yeah, you can kind of see where this is going for the Izumo. He's not going to be having a good time here, so he drops off all of his torpedoes, and off they go to the side of his ship. So yeah, that's it, isn't it? His fate's pretty much sealed, and there we go. He gets a nice 8 hits on that, double flooding, and secures his second kill. And that was very good, and obviously his HP has gone down significantly, down to 5,000, but regardless he does have one last repair party, so this here is where I'd be thinking, actually yes, so if he hadn't got the Superintendent Captain skill, then he'd be stuck on this amount of HP, but at the same time if he'd got the actual skill to gain, the additional 3,000, then he'd also have an additional 3,000, so he'd actually be up to 8k. So I'm in two minds of this at the moment. So regardless, I mean, for this ship, going either for Superintendent or the Survivability Expert, regardless, both of those are very good choices for the ship. So honestly, it's quite hard to say. But anyway, so yeah, this game, you can see it's very much in the sort of favour of the enemies now. So there are currently two ships. There is the friendly Musashi, who is just on around about a quarter of his HP, and then there is Stefan, who's on about half HP, and then there are 5 enemy ships, with currently only the Musashi, which is capturing the point, and then behind them there is the Algerie, the Ibuki, and the Colorado, which are also providing fire support, and then the enemy Mayhan, I'm not really too sure where he is, but probably doing no good. So the torpedoes here, they do actually come off, they are now reloaded, and he can start firing upon the enemy Musashi. So he's holding his fire depending to see whether the Musashi does change his course, which he doesn't seem to, so he fires off his salvo, but unfortunately the Musashi was on very low HP. I mean, he's repairing, but going against an enemy Musashi who's got well over half his health and is actually healing, this is a lost battle for the friendly Musashi. But thankfully, he is still firing on him, so he is sort of resetting the capture point, but that's it. Stefan is now on his own in a sort of a 1 versus 5. So he gets 2 initial torpedo strikes on the Musashi, and yep, just about gets another 2 hits there, and leaves him on 200 HP, so he opens up and just gets that final 200 HP, securing his 3rd kill. So this is now already brought it down to a 1 versus 4, so already very good, and he's brought his total damage up to just under 120,000. So at this point he's in a pretty good situation really, because all the enemies are quite far spread apart, so he can really take them on one by one. And yeah, so we really just see what happens here. So he's sort of getting into a bit more of a position forward, just so he can see where the enemies are actually on the map, to see whether they're actually pushing the capture point, but it looks like none of them are pushing quite yet. But he does have a 13.5, I was about to say he's got a 13.5 kilometre range, but some of them have probably got a lower detectability than that, so we'll just see really where they're coming from. So as you can see, there is the enemy Ibuki there turning into the capture point, so he is actually trying to gain some points. And Stefan does start dropping some torpedoes, so it is going to be sort of hard because the Ibuki is a more manoeuvrable ship, so it is definitely going to be sort of wiggling a bit more, and you can see he has changed his course there, so Yeah, so he's not really going to get any hits here, unfortunately. But regardless, he's going to have more on reload pretty soon anyway. So I'm actually going to speed this up a bit because all that's really going to be happening is he's going to be waiting for his torpedoes to come off cooldown. So he's just really trying to get some space between him, as you know he's getting into his spotting range. So he didn't really want to get actually spotted by the Ibuki here. So he starts getting as far away as possible because obviously Stefan here obviously knows that he's not really going to leave the cap here. So he can get all the way up to this island and drop torps. And yeah, you can see here. So I'm actually going to slow this down in a second. So yeah, you can actually see, he's not really changing his course here. Drop some torpedoes. And there we go. So we can actually see the Algerie here. So the Algerie, he is on 7,000 HP. So is the Östergötland. So in this scenario, probably just in this instance, is probably where having that additional 1,000 HP would have come in incredibly useful. So you can see the Ibuki there. Yeah, he's taking all of those torpedoes. So all of those go in. Boom. He's got that hit. But unfortunately, he was staring at the torpedoes rather than actually firing on the enemy. So I think this is where he made sort of first mistake here. Because he could have got some initial damage then. So he does start firing on the Algerie. And you can see the actual HP is very, very close. Switches to armor piercing. Gets even more armor piercing damage. And yeah, he is firing high explosive back towards the Östergötland. And he does get him down to around 3,000 HP. And that was it. 158,000 damage, and now we're going to go to the results screen. So, yeah, that was incredibly close. So he's already got 2 devastating strikes, 158,000 damage, and that could have been a Kraken. So what I can really take from that situation, just sort of post-battle analysis, would be, rather than really looking at that Ibuki then, he spent a bit too much time actually looking at it, because he had quite a bit of time where he spotted then, and the Algerie didn't actually fire. So those few seconds, then he probably could have got a couple of salvos out and really closed the gap. I mean, I don't know what would have happened afterwards, because he still would have had to have gone against the enemy Colorado, as well as the Mayhan, which I believe still had a good portion of his HP left. But even so, that was a very, very close thing. So I think that was a sort of combination of many things there. So not getting those initial salvos, as well as not having the HP. But apart from that, that was a very, very good play from Stefan here. Unfortunately, I don't have the team score any of the other pages, but I am almost certain he would have been in the top 3, if not the top position on the team score. So that was a very, very good game. So thank you very much for submitting that, Stefan. And that's really it. So if you want to see any more like this in future, then please sure to let me know in the comments. And if you do have a replay, then please make sure to contact me, and I will take a look at it, see whether I can do a replay of it and analysis. And that's really it. So, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to leave a like, and if you have not subscribed already and you want to see more from me in future, then make sure to subscribe, and goodbye.